All right.
Welcome, Venerable. Welcome. We have week 4 of establishing the daily practice. So we'd also like to offer a mandala in the center today.
So I think that we're offering all the contents of the universe, imagine all the marvelous things of the world, the objects of our senses, which is the contents of the universe, basically, pile them all up and then imagine offering these to the Buddha as a request for the teachings. It's very auspicious. Okay.
Sarah, will you screen share? Thank you. Are you ready in the center? I can't see them in the center.
No.
No, so we'll just do it here. Sashi perki juk cheng me to tramri rablingi ehiregen pari tange shing du mekche umalgi roku nam da shing la chöpak shyo Jetsu lama tam pa kie nam ke cha kie kia la ken che chu chin tri ji cha sam pe ju je si ma la sa kie chu ki cha pa that to soul Hiram Guru Ratna Mandala Kami Achayami.
So I'll just say it in English. So we can try and say it from our hearts instead of just, we can just be sometimes just do things by rote and not think it. So we think as our motive, we're stating two things here. So the first one is that we're thinking until we're enlightened, we're going to rely upon the Buddha, his teachings, and our spiritual community. And then the second two lines, our motivation. We're thinking that, by the virtuous karmic seeds that we plant in our mind from listening to these teachings, may these seeds ripen in the future, no matter how long it takes, as our Buddhahood, because then we'll be perfectly qualified to benefit sentient beings. Sangye Chörang Toke Chognam La, Jancho Badu Dagni Kyapsu Chi, Dagi Chönyen Gipe Sonam Ki, Drola Penche Sangye Drupha Shog, Sangye Chörang Toke Chognam La, Jancho Badu Dagni Kyapsu Chi, Dagi Chönyen Gipe Sonam Ki, Drola Penche Sangye Drupha Shog. Okay.
Venerable,
so there's different ways of looking at our daily, like we've discussed. It's different. Pardon?
Apologies, this is Nina from Luxor, and I must apologize.
Hello, Nina.
But hello, we had a little bit of a problem calling in, but we would love to offer a mandala if it's not too late. If we didn't pass this precious opportunity, if you would allow us, we would be very grateful.
You just hold the mandala in your hands, and I will accept it on behalf of the Buddha. There you go. Can I see it? Where is it? Because sometimes they do that. They just offer it, don't even say the words. There you go. It's accepted. The universe has been accepted as a request for the teachings. How wonderful. Thank you, Nina, darling.
Thank you very much, Venerable, and apologies that we didn't do it.
It's perfect.
Thank
So
you.
listen, there's different ways of looking at a daily practice. First of all, again, taking ordinary examples. It's so clear. We need discipline and consistency, you can't just play tennis sometimes. It's sort of obvious. And again, using the example of tennis or music, you have to have the long-term goal in mind. You know that. We know that, to end up being Roger Federer or Bach or Buddha, whatever it is that you're aiming to become. So then the other thing to see, as we can see again with these examples, you need certain practices that on the face of it don't seem to be directly to do with tennis. That perfect example I always use, you go to Roger Federer and you're overweight and don't even know what a tennis racket is. It's impossible for you to start jumping around a court, hitting a ball. You don't even know how. So he gives you preliminary practices to do. Exactly the same here. Now, the actual beginnings of practice are when we change our mind. Bottom line, honestly, that's really the essence of being a Buddhist. If every time a delusion arises, you lessen it, and every time a virtue arises, you grow it, and you actively grow the virtues and you lessen the delusions. That's being a Buddhist. That's like playing tennis. But you need lots and lots of practices to prime your mind to even get somewhere, you know? So the way of describing that, as we've describing, as we see in the course notes, there are these 6 so-called preliminary practices, you know, the things that prime your mind to begin to do the actual work. So one way of looking at practice then is these practices that don't overtly look like they're changing your mind. Pure, you know, another way to talk about is purification, creating merit. Another way to call that is pulling out the weeds and growing the flowers, all these analogies that help us understand. So there's specific components of a practice. Sometimes you do more than others. Sometimes you could do lots of preliminaries. I mean, people spend years in retreat doing just the preliminaries, you know. They have a profound effect. So our day then, if you think of it, yeah, and another way to look at it is, okay, there's actual practices, and that's really throughout the day. If you think about it, your actual job, second by second by second, daily life, not on your cushion, and you can't say that's not practice, it's part of your daily life, is to be watching your body and speech like a hawk, controlling your body and speech, and then watching your mind and trying to adjust it. That's your daily practice. But in the morning and the evening it's skillful for our minds to have a formal practice to begin and end the day with. And of course, you can do more formal practices throughout the day if you want to. So to start the day is so good for the mind, like we've been talking. And then to finish the day, especially with the purification practice, is incredibly beneficial for the mind, you know. As Lama Yeshe says, then you can go to bed with a happy mind. And also psychologically, it works for us. You feel like you've achieved something because you've sat there, you've got your altar, you've got your cushion, you sit down, you do these things, and you feel good about yourself because you've done the discipline of your practice, you know. We all feel good about that. I remember even His Holiness the Dalai Lama's mother saying that when you get your practice done in the morning, you feel so good for the rest of the day. And it's really true. It's psychologically very beneficial for us. Like, you know, if you're committed to yoga and you do your 15 minutes every morning before the rest of the day, you feel good. You've done your practice. You know, that's how you feel. And one of our main sufferings is because we're all lazy, we put it off. And then we forget all about it. Like I told you about my friend who just stopped doing his water bowls. And 1 year later, there is rusty water bowls still sitting on the altar because he literally forgot. So we just get lazy. We put things off and then we forget. We know that, you know. So the hardest one is to have the discipline. And that means we need enthusiasm. And enthusiasm, you have to cultivate it. You can't force enthusiasm to come. And then when we understand enthusiasm, it's the opposite to laziness. We have to understand intellectually what that means. We'll discuss that in a second. So your daily practice, morning and evening, sometimes more some of the preliminaries, sometimes more of your actual practice. So as you progress in your practice, as you know, first you take refuge. So when you've taken refuge, you have various commitments, and it really helps to have these commitments. It's really, you know, we talk about vows and we talk about commitments. So because we're all lazy, it's good to, you know, when you sort of like you shake hands with somebody and you have an agreement that you'll do something. So Roger Federer tells you, I want you to do this every day. And you're happy to keep your commitment because you want to please Roger because he's your guru. And then you feel good that you've done it. So it's almost like psychologically helpful for ourselves, even just the fact that we can do it every day and have this sense of enthusiasm from it. We begin to get enthusiastic. So it's got many purposes. Of course, the long-term purpose of all of it is everything you do in a day and think in the day is leading you to Buddhahood. That's the point. Everything you think and do and say with your tennis, including your preliminaries, including your diet, including your push-ups, is to help you become Roger Federer. So there's different approaches at different times, you know. But the one way to frame your practice then is in terms of the commitments. So if you've taken refuge and lay vows, your first level of commitments, you commit to several things, and you're committing to, like you're shaking hands with the Buddha. You're doing a contract with the Buddha, you know. You've agreed to take refuge morning and night. You've agreed to offer every day something. You've agreed to be nice to sentient beings. You've agreed to study a bit of Dharma every day. You agree to have respect for the images and things that represent Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, all of these things. So it's good to have these because it reminds you. You tick the boxes, you know. And then, of course, for me, whenever I give refuge, it's not a commitment, but I always request people strongly to want to do the purification practice at the end of the day. As Lama Zopa says, we're insane not to do it every day. So this commitment to do a daily practice, it's enhanced more and more and more the more you hear the teachings. The more we hear the teachings about karma, the more logical it is that we do these things, not just trying to be a good girl, not because you'll be praised, not because you just want to get immediate results of feeling better. You understand the logic behind it. When you understand karma, this is crucial to understand. And often in our culture, we don't understand karma. We hear it like punishment and reward, you know. But the more we understand, again, the analogy here would be a garden. We know that the nature of the universe is such that a garden, every second, something's happening in that garden. You don't have to be doing anything. Every second, the weather being the way it is, the heat coming, the water coming, the seeds in the ground, things are happening. And if you don't do weeding every day, your garden is going to, you know, especially if you're in Florida like I am now, you know, within a month, you're going to have the weeds crawling up in your veranda, because it's intense weather. So you need to do weeding and pulling out the weeds and growing the flowers every day. That's a good analogy. It's dynamic, you know, because that's the way karma is. Every millisecond that you're existing, you're doing or thinking or saying something, and every one of those is sowing a seed. So you start to become very rigorous and clear and in charge of the process of making sure you try to sow as less negative seeds as possible and sow as many good seeds as possible. This is the principle behind a daily practice, you know. So you've got your commitments. That's the bare minimum. So if you don't understand that, you might sit there and do 1 hour watching your breath every day, but don't keep your commitments. Well, that's ridiculous. It's better to do even a 5-minute practice where you tick the boxes and you do the things you've committed to do than doing anything else. But anything else could be a bonus. So you've got to know what you're committed to do. So then you take your bodhisattva vows and you've got a little bit extra to commit to. You've got to read your vows, understand them, which is really powerful, because that can then inform your life more and more and more. And then when you get to the point where you take a tantric empowerment, you have even more commitments. And then you take a highest yoga tantra empowerment, you even then have the tantric vows. So they inform, they tell you your daily practice. You do your commitments, and then anything else is a bonus. And more, it becomes more and more structured, and you understand it more and more. But starting with something in the morning and something in the evening, it's like that's the infrastructure, and you begin to build on that as you progress through your studies and your practice. So it has some logic for you, you know. So of course, sometimes you can spend more time doing your practice, and other times, let's say you're very sick and you can't do much, but at least you tick the boxes and keep your commitments. Even if you're lying down in a fever, you attempt. Not just go, oh, I'm too tired or too sick, I can't do it. You want to keep your commitments. It's an honorable thing. You want that. You have a relationship with your guru. You have a relationship with the Buddha. You don't do it out of guilt and neurosis. You do it because you want to keep your word of honor, because that keeps you close. I mean, again, this is so logical. If you've got a music teacher and she gives you all this homework and takes care of you and tells you what to do, but you don't do it, of course, why would you think that she will keep teaching you? Why should she if you don't do what she asks? So it keeps your own relationship with your teacher alive. If you do your best, you know, to keep your commitments. It might even be, I mean, you know, for example, I remember I've got different commitments, of course, you know, as you progress over the years, you try to do more, you do more. And I mean, there's a strong, you know, I remember one time when I was very sick with fever. Normally my practice might take, you know, would longer, but I sat there on the edge of my bed and just went through in my mind each of my practices and did the very essence of it, because I wanted to keep my commitment. I want to keep the link alive. I don't want it to die, you know. It's a really important approach. It really makes sense, you know. So even if you can't practice the piano that day, you even think of something for a minute or two to keep it alive. And the point is, you're the beneficiary from this, not to do it out of guilt and shame and I'm going to be punished. That's a really strong drive for us when it comes to spiritual practice, and that's completely neurotic, you know. You're the beneficiary of it. Who do you think? Who do you think is the beneficiary except you, for goodness sake? So the more you understand the logic of the practices, And the more you understand that you mightn't get good feelings immediately. One of the very strong things about spiritual practice for many of us in the world, you meditate because you want to feel better. You want instant results. You don't get instant results from your garden. You don't get instant results from practicing music. You don't get instant results from going to the gym. It's a process. When we understand that, we become more patient and more humble, and we get more enthusiasm because we don't give up. If you go to the gym and expect to feel blissful already, you'll give up after one day. You've got to have you've got to be logical about it. But the discipline is the hardest one for all of us. All the lamas would say, the reason that you're going to be enthusiastic, the reason to have enthusiasm, the reason to make effort, what energizes you to make effort is when you know the benefits of what you're doing. If you don't know the benefit of ice cream, why would you make an effort? If you don't know the benefit of going to the gym, why do it? If you don't know the benefit of eating, why do it? It's so reasonable that you have to know the benefit. So of course, the benefit of going to the gym is fairly evident. The benefit of food is evident. The benefit of spiritual practice is not so evident because it's much harder. And if you think short-term results of feeling good is the criterion of success, well, you'll give up in a minute, you know. So let's remember again what enthusiasm is. It's really important, especially they teach this in the 6 perfections of the Bodhisattva. The 4th of the 1st of the 6, and the 4th, one of the most important ones. Because you can have incredible generosity, the first one, you can have morality and ethics, the second one, you can have incredible patience, the third one, but if you don't have enthusiasm, if you don't make effort, you will never, ever succeed. And that's what the discipline's about, you know. And we know this in everything in our lives. So the opposite of enthusiasm, we've talked about this, but I'll do it again, is incredibly important to understand. The opposite of enthusiasm is called laziness. It's quite shocking to hear this. So the 3 levels. Well, the first one is the obvious one, you know, I can't be bothered. This is very powerful. So then you analyze and you have to be logical. What's beneath that? Don't just say it. And when we understand what's beneath it, it's a revelation. It's called attachment. The most primordial way of looking at attachment, which they talk about in the Bodhisattva path, and they talk about the 8 worldly dharmas, this odd phrase. It's a more subtle way of talking about the pervasiveness of attachment at a more primordial level. Not so much attachment to sex or drugs or rock and roll, but it's attachment. The first part of this, and they're called the 8 worldly dharmas. The first one is this assumption, this is what attachment is, this craving, this is the one we're discussing, the craving to be feeling good, to be comfortable, for good feelings. So this is the one that's attacked. The moment you have, when they talk about enthusiasm, it's only really talking about it in terms of spiritual practice. Enthusiasm for samsara is not even technically enthusiasm, it's just more samsara, you know. So here what we're trying to get is enthusiasm to practice every day because we know the benefits. So that demands you have to make effort. And what is the thing you have to make effort? Think about this, it's logical. Whatever it is you're not good at doing is what takes effort. The thing you haven't accomplished. So what is it that takes effort then is to go against the craving to be comfortable. I mean, using the gym as an analogy, if you go to the gym and you put on your things and you stick on the machine and you start jogging, and as soon as you start puffing and panting, you stop, then you know nothing will change. Because the moment your attachment got upset because it doesn't like having to make effort, then you stop and you pretend, oh, I went to the gym today. Technically, you didn't, because you know if you don't go beyond that comfort zone, beyond that moment when it's difficult and push a little bit further, your muscles will never change. This is so logical. So that's the same here. Effort by definition is going against the craving for comfort, the craving for nice feelings. And that means we don't want to go beyond attachment's comfort zone, which means you've got to push, which means it's uncomfortable. And sometimes we can be so neurotic, we're going to have a mental breakdown if it's uncomfortable. We've got to grow up. We all know you've got to make incredible effort to achieve anything. And we honor people who spend 18 hours a day at the gym, who spend 18 hours practicing music, puffing and panting, who spend 18 hours a day playing tennis. We honor them. We admire their effort. And look at the hard work. Well, we're talking here changing your mind. And that really goes against the comfort zone. That means what? Forget about just doing your practice every day. That means when you get annoyed with your husband because he slurps his tea. You get annoyed with the dog because it barks. You get annoyed with the next door neighbor. You get annoyed with the red light. These baby examples of attachment not getting what it wants. That second, you have to make effort to go against the aversion, to greet the red light, to greet the dog's bark, to greet the husband slurping the coffee. That's practice. I'm happy you might sit down on your cushion and have a very nice meditation, and then you get annoyed and upset with your husband every 2 minutes. That's not, you've got to practice every second. And that's constantly making effort, going against your comfort zone of wanting only the nice sounding out of your husband, only no dogs bark, no red lights. In other words, we crave to get what attachment wants every second. This is intense. This is real serious practice. This is the hardest practice of all. You can sit very nicely for 10 minutes on your cushion and feel all lovely. But as soon as you get off your cushion, this is when the real practice starts. And that takes effort to practice giving up attachment, to practice giving up anger, to practice giving up jealousy. This demands effort and awareness every second of the day. So what effort means is going against the craving of attachment to get only the nice things, which is nice feelings, getting everything to behave nicely so I can feel good. That's attachment, people. So discipline. You wake up in the morning, you're tired. Oh, I can't do my practice, I can't be bothered, That's the first level of laziness. So you've got to go against it and catch it and know the benefits. You know the benefits. So you make yourself get out of bed. And you be delighted that you make the effort, not groan and complain. That just builds anger, and then you'll get distressed. Make the effort and then praise yourself for making the effort. And you catch it that second because it's so quick, that thought. Now, the next level of laziness is much more subtle, and it's a tricky one, because the next thought will be, oh, I'm too busy, I'll do it later, called procrastination. And that sounds like a virtue. Oh, I'm too busy, I'll do it later. No, you won't. In fact, the suffering in our lives is the buildup of all our, jobs we've put off doing. It's such a burden for most of us, This is one of our worst ones. And we are the one who suffers as a result. We put things off. What do you put off doing? The thing that takes effort. What takes effort? The thing that attachment doesn't want. So by definition, learning anything demands effort. It demands, we all say there's no gain, there's no pain, there's no gain. It's completely reasonable. But as soon as it comes to emotional stuff, we're like so infantile. We can't stand to feel uncomfortable. We're going to have a mental breakdown. We don't mind sweating and panting at the gym. We don't mind that. We kind of honor that. But as soon as you have to struggle with your anger, struggle with your depression, struggle with your attachment, we have a mental breakdown. We're so fragile, We've got to grow up. I'm really serious. Okay, be kind to yourself, but, don't be scared. We're so scared of meeting problems. It terrifies us. But this is what effort means. And the third one, the worst of all, which is so counterintuitive. Oh, I can't achieve that. It's not possible. I can't get single point of concentration. Oh, I can't do that practice. No, I couldn't do that empowerment. No, I couldn't keep those vows. No, I couldn't do that practice. No, I couldn't possibly study that. No, I couldn't do that course. No, it's not my thing. I can't do that. Not possible. That's not my way of doing things. I can't achieve that. It's seeing it as impossible. Well, you can achieve it. You can achieve it. We can achieve it. This is the main one. You open the door to the possibility. And it's the worst laziness because it makes we keep in our comfort zone. Oh no, I couldn't learn Tibetan. I'm American. How could I learn Tibetan? That's a foreign language. I couldn't do that. No, that's not my style. Yes, you could if you decided. If you know there's benefit, you'd do it. You have to know the benefit. Doesn't mean there is benefit. Maybe you don't learn Tibetan. But if there's benefit, then you will make the effort, and you can do it one step at a time. So part of the problem there is because we have ego grasping. We have the ignorance that sees everything as concrete. We see everything as absolute. We don't realize dependent arising as a process. When we understand cause and effect and dependent arising, then we know very well you can achieve something. You see Roger Federer, and you know you can't do it today. You know that. But if you've got the potential, then you know it's one step at a time. And you then persevere. Perseverance is making effort. That's what it means. You persevere because you know you can achieve it. And you go one step at a time with discipline and reasonableness, you know. This is what brings enthusiasm. And eventually it becomes what they call joyful effort. You're so happy to do it. You're so glad to make effort. And you know that again, in an ordinary world, you come home from the gym exhausted, but you feel happy because you know you've achieved something, even though you're exhausted. That we all understand. So same here with our practice, you know. You control your mouth. That day, you don't say one bad word. You control your mind. You don't get angry. You really control yourself. You feel glad about it. This is making effort. And without it, we don't succeed. It's very simple. So you have to have courage to make effort, you know. So that's one broad approach. So the other broad approach is there are different, like I was saying, there's different components to a daily practice, different components to your practice in general. One is, you know, the purification. One is the kind of the preliminary practices, the formal ones. One is practices that help you purify your mind. One is a particularly practice that help you create lots of virtuous karma, lots of merit. One is, you know, another type of way of seeing it is, you know, different practices you can choose. Let's say you're really depressed this morning. You're really paralyzed by it. Well, you might select a particular practice that will help lift you, you know. So instead of doing a meditation on death, which will make you even more miserable, you might do a meditation on Tara, who's confidence and energy and enthusiasm, and then it'll lift you. You might say, if you're really angry, you might decide to do compassion meditation, you know, say mantra and try and calm your anger down with compassion. So you choose different practices that suit you at that time. If your mind's really rattled and you can't control, you might do the 9-round breathing to help you. You know, there's lots of little techniques in there. And the more you become familiar with these practices, you'll understand their benefits. So you can choose different ones, you know. You might do the purification practice. You might say the Bodhisattva mantra. You might say the compassion mantra. The more you learn, the more these tools you put into your toolkit, you know, and you can use them, not just on your cushion, but throughout the day. And then, of course, the other component is to study the teachings. And this is something that we sort of seems almost contradictory to what we mean by practice. We're so obsessed with this concept of meditation being non-conceptual, but it's way more than that, you know. Because finally, being a Buddhist means you're programming your mind with the views that Buddha has found from his own direct experience that are in sync with reality, the view of impermanence, the view of emptiness, the view of becoming a bodhicitta, the view of karma, the view of cause and effect. These are the fundamentals of the Buddhist view of the universe. So finally, when you're being a Buddhist, you're internalizing these viewpoints, initially intellectually, and then through practice experientially. You get to see how they are in fact reality. And indeed, as the Dalai Lama says, if you can prove they're not reality, then of course you give up Buddha. This is what being a Buddhist means, not just watching your breath, not just doing a prayer, not just saying a mantra. They're all supporting you do the actual job of radically reconfiguring your mind and your view of the universe. Karma, impermanence, emptiness, bodhicitta, all of these things. Understanding what attachment is, how it causes suffering, understanding the nuts and bolts of Buddha's view of the universe. That's what being a Buddhist really is, you know. So all the practices you do enable that, enhance that, help you accomplish that. So what else, people? Ask me some questions now. I kind of finished in a way. So ask me some questions.
One quick question. Your voice went out for a second. The third, laziness. Your voice went out just for like
the main
30.
one is I can't do it. Not possible. I can't achieve that. Not possible. I can't achieve.
That's number one. And number
It is not-
3.
It is not. I just told you it's a third one, Tara.
My apologies.
Yeah, indeed you should. I mean, the first one is I can't be bothered. The second one is I'm too busy. The third is I can't do it. Do you hear me or not, Tara? If
Yes, thank you. Yes, thank you.
Yes,
And, Barbara?
Hi, Venerable. Thank you for your
Oh,
teaching.
sweetheart. Yes.
I have a question about commitments.
Yes.
And when you talk about commitments, they're like formal commitments, like when one takes vows, then with that come commitments. What about
No,
establishing?
strictly speaking, so just to clarify words, darling, a commitment is a decision to do something, and a vow is a decision to refrain from something. They're two separate things technically. So when you take refuge, you have a series of commitments, and then you take the lay vows, you've got the vows. They're separate things.
Okay. And then what about making my own commitments?
That's your decision. You can do what you like.
Okay.
That's your decision. You can do what you like. We're talking about formal ones that you have with the Buddha or with your teacher who gives you the with whom you take the vows. You're kind of doing a personal thing with that person, you know. But it's you are vowing yourself. You're not vowing to do what, but you're agreeing in front of somebody representing the Buddha that you will keep these commitments and keep the vows. But you're the beneficiary of it. You're really committing to yourself, vowing to yourself. But they're formally in front of somebody. They're the Buddhist vows and the commitments. But you can make whatever commitments you like. We need to do that every day, don't we? To give ourselves structure. Absolutely. Perfect.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Barbara. Yeah, what else, Beam? Nothing else? Okay. So last week I said something, I think Tara's notes sometimes wasn't quite accurate what I said, but she does a pretty good job saying all the things that I said. So one of the things that says here, Tara, what you say is, where is it this week, the notes from last week? Where are we? Weeks 1 to 3, here we go. Very helpful, these notes. Thank you, Tara. Okay, let's just go over what we said last week just to check some of the things here. Okay, it's okay. Most of the things are fine. Use the tools, that's okay. You have disciplined handbook, right? Remember your refuge, get up, first thought, Thursday, all those things I said last week, that's right. And the practice of generosity, I think wasn't quite, yeah, that when I was discussing generosity, one of the things I was discussing last week, I think the two main things that we need to get another decent human life and decent conditions in which we practice, right? We need non-killing. So the best way to have which gives us a human body, and that comes from living in the vows of non-killing. But then we have the practice of generosity. Generosity. I must have mentioned it quite a few times last week. Where's the point you made? So yeah, anyway, killing is what gives you the human body. Non-killing is what gives you the human body. Living in the vow very specifically of not killing. So whereas Tara says non-virtue, the virtue of not killing and generosity is what gives us the human birth. No. Non-killing gives you the human birth. Generosity gives you good conditions in that human birth so that you've got enough leisure. Whereas Tara said luxury, maybe I mentioned the word luxury. So non-killing, the action, the intentional action of non-killing, especially living in the vows of non-killing, that is the main cause of getting another human body after we leave this body. That's the karma we want to be triggered at the time of our death. But in order to have leisure We need leisure. We don't want to have to, like, you know, she's got it in the notes. That's good. We don't have to want to be born in a place where we have to work 14 hours a day just to get a bowl of rice. I mean, look at most of our lives. We have to work all the time to earn enough money to then leftover time we use for practice. So it's like a miracle to have leisure so that you have enough conditions and food and money and support so that then you can spend your time practicing, which is the point of life, not just pursuing samsara. So generosity is the action. Another one, it does not give you a human life. Generosity gives you the conditions. And generosity means what? Let's look at this, one of the perfections again. We talked about enthusiasm being one of the 6 perfections. Well, generosity is a massive one. That's what we've been talking about, our practices. A major component, this is the point about these practices, this is particularly in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. The major component of our practice in relation to the 3 jewels, in relation to the Buddha, in relation to the Guru, many of our practices, offering on the altar, making offerings, is a stupendously powerful and easy way to practice bucket loads of generosity. You know, in the 6 perfections, they talk about the 3 levels of generosity. The first one is giving material things. And we're discussing that here. Forget another level. Just giving material things. The second one, which is said to be more difficult, is giving spiritual advice. Now, unfortunately, we don't like the first one. We don't like giving material things. We all think we're poor. We're a bit miserly, because if we think we give £5, I've suddenly got less than £5. We feel nervous, you know. But we love giving spiritual advice. We love giving spiritual advice. It's cheap and easy for most of us. But nevertheless, as Lama Zopa says, you can give food to everybody on the planet. This is inconceivable. I mean, we must give material things. There's no question. But you can give one piece of spiritual advice to one person. That is a more profound action karmically for you and in the long-term benefit for everyone else, because that one piece of spiritual advice can help a person become enlightened, and therefore that person can benefit countless living beings. But we need to think of the generosity one in terms of the material things. So this is why the practice, especially the Tibetan Buddhist one, especially within the Vajrayana, in relation to the Guru being the Buddha, or even just the Buddha, inconceivable virtue, inconceivable karmic merit of generosity, inconceivable. But we have to think that through because it's not evident to us. Doing your water bowls every morning is an inconceivably powerful practice, of which you are the beneficiary. You're not just being a good girl, but even just the thought of offering something is already stupendous, you know. We need bucket loads of generosity karma. Because it's sort of obvious that from the ordinary point of view, and this is why it's the first of the 6 perfections, and they each go in more difficult order. It's like it opens the door. If you can learn to be, and there's different things, learning to be generous to the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha is one thing. It's a very powerful generosity. But I'm just talking about even ordinary generosity to poor people, to friends, to whoever, to the ant, to the dog. Giving even one mouthful of food to a dog is a profound action of generosity. So it's learning the one of this in terms of the perfections, the 6 perfections, it's opening the door to connecting with others. If you're seeing sentient beings in terms of what can I give them? What do they need? This is a profound practice of the Bodhisattva, you know. I mean, this topic is not the Bodhisattva practice. This topic here is not that, it's a daily practice, but understanding generosity is a huge one. I mean, usually with attachment, we go around looking at the world in terms of what it can do for us. Here, especially if we get onto the Bodhisattva path, we're trying to see the whole world in terms of what we can do for them. So you learn to see sentient beings in terms of what they need. How can I help? This is how you cultivate generosity. So the particular point here, though, I'm talking in terms of our practice is a marvelous opportunity to create enormous amounts of generosity karma in relation by many of our practices being practices of giving, making offerings to the Buddha. We need to think about this because it's not what we're used to unless we've been very devoted Christians. It doesn't make sense to us. Why would I offer to the Buddha? Why does a Buddha want 7 water bowls, for God's sake? Why does the Buddha want a flower? It's obvious that you are the beneficiary of that practice. It's obvious, you know. not just thinking that way. If you give $20 to a homeless person, there are two people who benefit. One is the person, but you are the beneficiary of that practice. That programs your mind with generosity. So it's a huge one to be conscious about, to want to develop generosity and for your own benefit. We feel embarrassed by that. We think it sounds selfish, but we're missing the point if we think that. It's the opening the door to want to benefit others is incredible. It's a powerful practice. But the practice in our daily life of offering water bowls, offering to the holy beings is a huge practice. If you have a relationship with a guru, who is the Buddha for you, offering your service to that person is an unbelievable practice of generosity. You know? This is the way we can incorporate very powerful generosity into our daily practice. So non-killing is the specific cause of getting a human body. Best way is in the framework of living in vows of not killing. And then generosity is a very specific practice of learning to give material things, giving. And then particularly in terms of our practice, giving to the holy beings, giving to the three jewels, giving to the guru, giving to the Buddha, a huge practice. Even just in your mind, even rejoicing in others' generosity. There's always this story, they talk in the Lam Rim, some, the Lama, obviously clairvoyant, in the front row at the teaching was what they call the benefactor, this dude who offered things to the, this is how they talk in Tibetan, like a puja happens, and then the person who's a benefactor, who gives the offerings, who makes the offerings, who gives the money, who sponsors it. So they're always treated nicely and sat in the front row, So there's a story about this is the benefactor in the front giving all his offerings, and like he's offering a tanka, offering this, offering that to the Lama, and the one poor beggar in the back, one beggar, is rejoicing. How marvelous! I wish I could offer that. And the Lama said, because he was clairvoyant, he could see, he said, the poor person in the back just created, I forget the story, something like the poor person in the back just created infinite more karma, virtuous karma of generosity than the person who actually gave it. Even just rejoicing, delighting in someone else's generosity. This is a very powerful practice, Maybe we're not rich, you can only give $1 to a homeless person, but you delight in other people's generosity instead of kind of being resentful or, this rejoicing is an amazing practice in someone else's generosity. It's an incredible practice, opening the mind, being delighted. So the two main things we need to get a decent human life such that we can continue to practice is 1, non-killing, living in a vow to not kill, and 2, the conscious, intentional practice of generosity. And then more specifically, the powerful levels of generosity in your daily practice in relation to the Guru, the Buddha. This is a huge component of your practice. Why does offering the water bowls every day, offering lights, offering the objects of the senses as an amazingly powerful practice for one's own benefit. We need generosity. That's why I mentioned Lama Zopa's house in Aptos in California. He had an entire room for water bowls. And the nuns would spend 8 hours a day with these gigantic water bowls. And in Lama Zopa's house, for example, his room in Kopan, where he has been the last 2 years, the nun there, Venerable Jan, she spends all day, any spare inch of surface for Rinpoche is covered in holy objects and is covered in offerings to the holy beings, He's a very powerful example. Rinpoche is said to be a very powerful example of his generosity. He's got so many projects. He never raises a finger to raise money. The money comes to him. People offer him things, and then he offers, he's famous for his offerings. So if you go visit Lama Zopa with some beautiful offering, you bought this lovely statue and you offer it to Lama Zopa, let go of it, I promise, because the next person will walk out with it. This is a fact. The stories about Rinpoche one time in London, and Venerable Roger was getting Rinpoche ready to go to the airport, and Rinpoche comes out of his room with his underskirt on. He's got no robes. He'd given his robes away to some new monk, so Roger had to track down the monk and get the robes back, Rinpoche's given away his shoes. He's famous for his generosity, and he's famous for the way he raises money. We all can see we've got such poverty mentality, So there's one time years and years and years ago, the Sarah J Monastery, which is one of the big monastic universities originally in Lhasa, but also now in India, Rinpoche's monastery. He was requested by the abbot to start a fund to feed all the monks. There's like many thousands of monks, and usually they're very poor, and the monastery was poor. So he was asked to start a fund to get a fund to start building good kitchens and provide food for the monks. There's thousands of monks there. So he was asked to do that. And so Venerable Roger, the story is something like he kept wondering when Rinpoche was going to start raising the money. He couldn't see any evidence of it. So one time they had a meeting in Taiwan with some abbess. And the morning after the meeting, the abbess said to Venerable Roger that she'd had a dream the night before in which Kuan Yin, you know, this Chinese, I don't know the name of it, it's a female version of Chenrezig, the Buddha of compassion. She had a dream in which Kuan Yin appeared to her and said, this very special person is coming tomorrow, give him whatever he wants. So the thing is about the Taiwanese monasteries, they're really amazing in Taiwan. All the people are totally generous to all the monasteries, and all the monasteries give everything in turn back to the lay people. So, you know, what did he want? He wanted, you know, $992,000.24. And so that's exactly what she gave him. So that's how he raises his money, through the Buddhas, you know. So he's famous for his generosity. He's famous for his generosity. Very inspiring, you know. And you can see the benefit of generosity is it opens your mind. It opens you, it makes you courageous. Mostly we feel, oh, I can't give anything. I'm poor. I only earn $1,000 a month. I've got to keep it every cent of my food. And with this, I'm very poor. I have no money. I'm poor. We think this way. We define ourselves in this way, really small, you know. Sure, we might be poor, but we have to stop thinking like that. Receiving anything is not just because, you know, receiving anything, even a grain of rice, is the fruit of your past generosity. So if you nourish that generosity karma by wanting to give, by practicing doing the water bowls, practicing offering to the holy beings, practicing giving something to a homeless person, to whoever wants something, you nourish that generosity karma, and don't be surprised that you'll start receiving. But all the time, just sort of, oh, I don't have anything. I can't give. I only have this much. We're very scared, you know, very scared of giving. And or the other extreme is I'm so generous. We give everything away, but you don't pay your debts. This is a really common thing. People don't pay their credit card debts, you know. I mean, that's unbelievable. That's blocking receiving anything. That's stealing, and it's lying, you know. So we've got to be incredibly rigorous and disciplined and ethical when it comes to money. Every cent, you know, treat it with incredible respect. Otherwise, we'd block ourselves from receiving. So any questions? Any questions? No questions? What's there? Someone? Yes.
Miriam?
Yes, Miriam. Hello, my dear.
Yes, hi, Venerable.
Yeah.
Last time you talked about generosity and you said it needs the intention. Can you, like,
I don't understand. What do you mean? What do you mean by that?
I thought that you said that it's not just enough to be generous, but you need to basically have the action or the intention that you want to give. So you have to think it through. Is that correct, or did I get that wrong?
I'm not quite
Well,
sure.
say, like I give in the street, I give to a beggar, yes? Or somebody comes up to me and asks me for money, so I give. Do I have to form the mental intention and go through the whole process, or is it enough to just give with an open heart and as a natural thing? Am I making myself clear?
Yeah, sort of, but don't call it a natural thing. It's not natural. Don't say it's natural as if everybody is naturally generous. It's not true. Many people are absolutely not generous. So don't say
natural
it's
for me. Yeah. Okay.
If it is natural for you, it's because you practiced it, but you've got to cultivate it more. So the point, no, what I did say was not the word intention. This is a crucial point. We often use the word intention to be synonymous with the word motivation, but they're technically different. Intention is just the bare thought, I will give. But what makes it beneficial or not is the motivation. meaning with a good heart, as you just said. So like I think I might have mentioned last week, if let's say I'm with you and I want to impress you and I give $20 to a homeless person just to impress you, that's not so virtuous. So it's the motivation, as you said, a good heart. It's natural for you because you've practiced it. Well, be delighted, but keep practicing it. So yes, of course, the motivation is really important. That's exactly right, darling.
I got it. Thank
Intention
you.
is I will give, and then motivation is why you give. So that the more conscious that is, the more powerful the karma, definitely. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, good. What else, people? Any questions? Yes, Ariella, talk to me.
Good evening, Venerable
Hello,
Robina.
darling.
In regards of the intention, for example, giving to a beggar. So
Giving what? Say it again.
giving charity to a beggar, I'm taking Miriam's example.
Yes.
Giving out of, I want to do as many merits as I can.
Mhm.
Is it good enough, or also there needs to be an intention, I want to help a person in need?
First of all, the word intention, strictly speaking, the word intention is bare bones, I will give. There's no taste there. The point that we're discussing is the motivation. So it is really important. Of course, the purest motivation for everything is bodhicitta. You only want to benefit others. But what I'm getting about, what I'm talking about that we miss is that we think, oh, wow, I create so much merit, thinking that somehow we think it's selfish. It is good to think that. And it is correct to think I must create as much merit as possible. There's nothing wrong with that. But if it really is just a selfish reason, then you won't get the benefit anyway. But it's excellent. We must remember that we need, for our own sake, to create bucket loads of generosity, bucket loads of these things. That's the point we hugely miss in our culture. So the difference is giving because you want to be seen as an important person. That's rubbish. That's not virtuous at all. Giving out of a good heart, but knowing it's great that you're creating the virtue of giving, that's rejoicing in your own virtue. That's a fantastic practice. We need to consciously know that. Do you understand? It's very specific, you know? But we often feel ashamed. Oh, I shouldn't do it for that reason. You don't do it only for that reason. Because if you do it for that reason, it just becomes selfish. You won't think properly about it. But knowing that giving out of a good heart is a marvelous practice for you. That's the point. Do you understand? That's so important. Yeah, it's a perfect point, Miriam. Thank you. Unless Ariella, yeah. Yes, hello, Christine.
Good evening, Venerable. I think I've heard last week that you said that in your morning practice, you were asking the Buddha to come in the room, or I don't remember exactly what you said.
You said to knock.
Asking the Buddha to come in the place, or how?
Yeah, that's even one of the, yeah, so it's the attitude. The attitude is the first practice is you walk into your place, your gompa, your room where you have your practice, and you do your 3 prostrations. And then you want to, the first practice is to clean the place. In other words, you're cleaning it because you want to invite the Buddha. Of course, Buddha's there, but it's just a practice for your mind. Like you'd have a guest, you'd make the place nice to welcome your guest. It's got a very sweet meaning. That's the point. So that's the point, the attitude. Because then even one of the prayers we do often in some of the prayers in the morning, there's a prayer that is where you actually are inviting the Buddha to come. Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Very sweet. You understand?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Good. Thank you so much, Christine. Who else, people? It's 2 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. What time did we start? I forget. 1, 2. Okay, go on, people. Talk to me. Any questions? Good to have questions, please. Yes.
Oh, good.
Huh? Who's talking? Who chatted just then?
I'm
Yes,
not
Carol.
sure.
Hello, darling. Yes, Carol.
Thank you, Venerable. It wasn't me chatting, so is
Oh, okay.
somebody take my
Okay.
place?
Okay. But you have a question, do you, Carol?
I have
Good. Hang on, I've got to move my chair just a minute because my battery's running out. Hang on a second. Okay, I'm here. Go. No light though. You can't see me well, but that's okay. Go.
So virtue is in touch with reality. Virtue is reality.
No, no. Is that your question?
It's a question. It was a statement, but obviously it's now a question because you said no. So
no, that's right, exactly. The way of talking, okay. There's a way of talking. All right, there's a way of talking. The word virtue, you could say the word virtue, the word goodness, the word merit. These are all roughly synonymous. And any practice that develops those, that's called a practice that creates merit. It's like growing the flowers. So being loving, being kind, giving something, you know, that's a practice that cultivates, that grows, that increases your merit, increases your goodness, increases your virtue. Then another way of looking is any practice that cleans up the mess, like practices that purify, that pull out the weeds. Every time you stop being angry, every time you go against being lazy, you go against being angry, you go against stealing or harming or killing, that's a practice. It is also virtuous, but it's a specific practice, if you like, of purifying. So there's all practices actually create virtue, and all practices actually purify, but there are some are specific for purifying and some are specific for practicing virtue. Now then you've got, then you've got practices that are very specifically to help you see reality. So every time you think about impermanence, you are removing the obstacles that prevent you from seeing the reality that everything's impermanent. Every time you think about karma, you're removing the obstacles that prevent you from seeing that everything is cause and effect. Every time you argue with the logic of, you think about how this, the creator is not the cause of you, you're removing the obstacles that make you think that that's true. Every time you think about emptiness and dependent arising, you're breaking down the obstacles that cause you to see things as self-existent. That's to see reality. That's, if you like, that's the wisdom wing. And then the compassion wing is the one where you practice virtue. Put it that way. Maybe you can say it that way. You understand?
thank you so much.
Okay. All right, darling. Perfect. Okay. What else, people? What else? Something else. So let's just quickly look at our dear Kendall's course notes to see all the things that I've missed. Whereas if you've read her course notes, you will have learned so much because she does such a good job. Let me have a look. Where are they? There we go. 8, GB 8. Notes, previous to Shakyamuni weekly. DB 8. Here we go. All right, let's have a look. Okay. Overview 6 preparatory practices. Always opposed to in between sessions, dealing with obstacles. Lama Zopa's advice from discovering Buddhism students, waking up motivation. Start the day with motivation. Morning practices, prostrations. Morning practices, Guru Yoga and Lamrim. So Guru Yoga, I haven't actually discussed it specifically. This is, of course, again, in the framework of it. It's sort of the implied Vajrayana framework of most Tibetan Buddhist practices. It's taught in all the sutra teachings too, but specifically in the Vajrayana for the Tibetan Buddhists, So yeah. So there are some practices that are specifically related to what they call Guru Yoga, which is basically a practice in which, let's say, you visualize Shakyamuni Buddha, let's say starting with Shakyamuni Buddha, and then and you think of the Shakyamuni Buddha, the Buddha, you're visualizing light coming, you absorb, and then you visualize, and you say his mantra, and you receive the blessings, and you dedicate. The key practice of Guru Yoga is practicing thinking and remembering that Shakyamuni Buddha is the same as your guru. And your guru is Shakyamuni Buddha. So there's something that just seems weird to us in a way, initially, I think. I know when I first heard all these teachings, I just didn't understand what they were talking about. But I think it really makes sense. So I was, again, ordinary examples. I learned music from my mum, okay? She was my music guru. So let's say she was teaching me Bach, and she did. Think about this. It's so logical, but as soon as it comes to religion, we get weird, you know? So Bach is dead, all right? He is dead. Mr. Bach is dead several hundred years ago. So how can I learn to play Bach? I want to play Bach. How am I going to learn to play Bach? It is such a no-brainer that the only method I've got, the best method, is to find a human being who has accomplished Bach's music. It's sort of so obvious, it's a joke. You know, one of the commonest questions I have found among Westerners all over the world is, do we need a spiritual teacher? It's one of the commonest questions. Or why do we need a spiritual teacher? But I don't think anybody would ask you the question if you want to become like a musician playing Bach. I can't imagine anybody saying, well, do you think I need a teacher to do that? People would laugh at you. You even need a teacher to become a good cook. But for some reason, because we have these weird ideas of what spiritual means, you know? But I mean, how in the name of heaven on earth could I learn to play tennis without going and asking Roger Federer to teach me? Okay, that's the point. He even, forget that Roger Federer. I mean, the better example is Bach, because I want my mother, who has embodied Bach. My mother has accomplished Bach. She is a knowledge holder of Bach. And that's even a more powerful example than Roger Federer, because tennis is a fairly new thing, you know? But if there's Bach, who's dead, and his music is, all it is sitting on pieces of paper, isn't it? I said before recordings came along, all you had was the sheet music. So how can you interpret those weird little dots and notes and squiggles if there wasn't a human being who has learned that language, who has experienced that music? And where did they get it from? Their teacher. And where did they get it from? Their teacher. And where did they get it from? And you're going to track those teachers back, those living knowledge holders, right back to Bach. We get that. We don't spell it out like that, but that's exactly how it is. So it is completely obvious we need one of them, you know. I mean, as Lama Yeshe said, Buddha is dead. The Four Noble Truths will only become real for me when I hear them from the person, in fact, that I've chosen, who for me is the Buddha. So it's obvious when I'm learning music from my mother, I chose, you know, I didn't, in a sense, I didn't choose my mum, did I really? She sort of chose me, but let's just pretended I did choose my mum as my teacher. If I'm sitting there and she's telling me, and I don't have confidence that she knows Bach, let's say, oh, what are you telling me that for, Mum? Why do I put my hand that way? Why do I do it this way? If I don't have confidence that she's a valid knowledge holder of music, then I'm not going to learn much, am I? She might be the best exponent of Bach on the planet, but until I am confident that she is that, I won't get much benefit. What do you mean by that, Mum? Why are you telling me that? Oh, I don't know, you know. So it's the work we need to do. There are many people out there who will tell you that they're Buddhists, many wacky people, with respect, because we think religion is not very meaningful. I mean, you can't pretend to be Bach, you know. You can't pretend to play like Bach, but spiritual, we can get away with talking rubbish because people will believe anything. We're so pathetic when it comes to spiritual. So as Pabonka Rinpoche says, choose your guru, your person who is heavy with qualities. That's the name of the word. Very carefully, because you're going to end up like them. So the more confidence I have in my mum being an embodiment of Bach, the more likely I am open to her advice. And guess what? The more quickly I will become my Bach, because my mind is open to her advice. It's sort of logical, you know. So we all need one of them. So one of the main components actually in a Tibetan Buddhist practice is when you do the practices like Tara, Chenrezig, Shakyamuni Buddha, any of these, you practice, it becomes a guru yoga practice, as they call it, when you visualize Chara, visualize Chenrezig, visualize Buddha as being the manifestation of your Lama's mind. Lama is the same word in Tibetan for guru. Or in English, we'd probably say spiritual mentor, whatever word you like, you know. It's logical. Now, another way of putting it, like I think of Roger Federer, I think of the tennis example. You know, when you look at these pictures of the Buddha, so Shakyamuni, because we can know he was a person, one behind me, we know he was a person 2,500 years ago. So we think, oh, well, there's the Buddha, you know. But it's just a picture of him. So you go back 2,500 years, you would have to have done exactly the same thing. It's easy for us to go, oh, there's the Buddha. Look, you can tell, you know, with his ushnisha and his long ears and everything. Oh, that's the Buddha. What do you mean my Lama is the Buddha? Well, if you were back in India 2,500 years ago, you would have seen the Buddha with his yellow robe on, and there were thousands of sadhus. The place was crawling in sadhus back in India. How the hell would you have known one from another? You wouldn't. You don't go, oh, well, that must be a Buddha. You wouldn't have a clue. How do you find out? As Buddha said, you better check up on my teaching. Don't just believe me. Check up on what I'm telling you. That's exactly what we're doing now, you know. So the other way to put it, you know, in Vajrayana, we have these more subtle manifestations of Buddha. This is totally from the Vajrayana, the Bodhisattva path and the Vajrayana. So there's different Buddhas, Tara, Chenrezig. There's another whole discussion in one of the modules. We'll discuss that later. But that's another manifestation of Buddha, but in a more subtle level. Only the Arya Bodhisattvas can see this Buddha at that level. But it's the same Buddha's mind, but a different aspect. So my sense is a bit like this. You know, when you practice, for example, Chenrezig. So Chenrezig is the manifestation of a particular quality called love and compassion. Then you've got wisdom, say Manjushri, the manifestation of wisdom. You've got all the many different Buddhas, each representing a different quality that you want to cultivate, for example. So they're sort of like, so then you say, well, they use the word deity in Tantra. It's just another term for the word Buddha in this context, but a different aspect of the Buddha. So then when you try to think, well, that Tara, that green lady with, you know, holding this and holding that, that's my Lama manifesting as Tara. So again, we get a bit confused by that. What does that mean? Well, I think of it like this. Let's say you have a picture and someone draws a picture of a perfect tennis player. In fact, these pictures are really just depictions of idealized aspects of the Buddha. Like there's Tara. She's got holding this and holding that and this color. Everything has meaning, and the whole of and all it adds up to being this particular Buddha representing a particular quality. But she's sort of like, who is she? You know, you go, who is Tara? Well, then if you see this picture, let's say someone draws you a perfect picture of an idealized tennis player, but it's just a generic person. So that's a tennis player. But how are you going to make that real for you? You put Roger Federer's face on that. Then it becomes real for you. It's a generic tennis player. There's a generic Buddha. Now you put your Lama's face on that Buddha, and that becomes the guru is the Buddha and the Buddha is the guru. And then it becomes real for you. Then it becomes real for you, because that tennis player with the perfect arms and holding the racket perfectly, holding this one, exactly a perfect picture of a perfect tennis player. But it becomes real for you when you put Roger Federer's face on it. Then it's your tennis player, your coach, your guru. And he is the perfect tennis player, and the perfect tennis player is Roger Federer. It's like that, if that helps you. Maybe that confuses you even more. I do not know. then it becomes real, you know. You think Tara, so, you know, in my case, Lama Zopa Yeshe, Lama Yeshe are my main lamas. I have other lamas too, but they're my main lamas, you know. So when I do Tara practice, I think it's Lama Yeshe or Lama Zopa, depending on which day. It's not just this green lady, but she is my lama. When I do Chenrezig, he is my lama, manifesting as Chenrezig for my benefit. And this is what brings the benefit, because it makes you feel close. If you just see a generic picture in a book of a tennis player, it's kind of abstract, but you put Roger Federer's face on it, he becomes real for you. That's the way to think about these generic images of the Buddhas, you know, Tara, Chenrezig, Vajrayogini, whoever they are. It's just psychology. They're just different depictions of different psychological qualities. But you put your lama's face on them, then it becomes personal for you. Then the benefit comes. So when I think of Bach, I think of my mother, you know, yes, it's Bach, but my mother, she embodied Bach for me. Are we communicating, people? So we can't force, we might not have a teacher, but that's up to us to find, to look around and to see the person and then to choose carefully, as Pabonka said, because you're going to end up like them. So it's a very serious decision. And you can have many teachers. You can have many spiritual mentors, you know, it's up to us. And then once you do choose, you have to cultivate the view that they are the Buddha, because we have an idealized picture of the Buddha, like a statue, you know, looking very nice and holy in his meditation. But, you know, and this is the other interesting point. A person who has become a Buddha, they're well and truly past needing bodies. We study this when we study all the teachings in the Mahayana. You get to a point where you don't need to be reborn. You've done the job. You've finished delusions and you've already got such a high level of realizations. You don't need a body, but you will take a body because your only reason is to help sentient beings. You know, so you will manifest in a body. That's why the example of the Dalai Lama is said. All the lamas will say he is the Buddha. Now we might go, oh, wow, the Dalai Lama is amazing. He's the Buddha. But you don't know he's the Buddha. You're not clairvoyant, for goodness sake. But you cultivate the view that he is the Buddha. But then we get a bit sort of naive and we think, oh, well, if he's the Buddha, why is he getting old? And why does he wear glasses? And surely a Buddha doesn't need to wear glasses. But what we've got to realize is a person who is a Buddha doesn't need a body. So they're going to take a body that suits sentient beings' needs, you know? So your guru might be short, might be fat, might be tall, might pick his nose, might be a girl, might be a boy, might be a lay person, might be a monk, might be a nun. Could be anything. They will take any form that is necessary. That's the way to think about it, you know? And then you cultivate the view that whatever they say, whatever they do, is for the benefit of me, is for benefit, showing me what I can become. In other words, when you're practicing with Roger, everything Roger tells you is to help you play tennis. There couldn't possibly be anything that he does that wouldn't help you play tennis. So then when you have that in mind, you will learn tennis very, very quickly. That's the attitude to have. So it takes time to think this, and we have to cultivate it. It doesn't come naturally, you know. And then we get the blessings. You know, then you might have dreams in which your own guru talks to you. That happens because your mind has become more pure and it lifts you, it opens your heart, you know. Then you really then open. So when I had if my mother was my teacher and I really had confidence she was like Bach, the more she told me what to do, the more it went into my heart because my heart was open. But if you start finding fault, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? You close yourself off. You get no blessings whatsoever. A blessing is not something mystical. It's that when your heart is open, you receive it very quickly. That's what I mean by blessings, you know. Anyway, that popped up for some reason. I don't know why. Guru Yoga. That's a major component of your practice. If you can add that to your practice, you'll get many very good results, I tell you. So I think we're about done as usual. Any questions, please? You have to ask me questions, you darling people. You have to ask me some questions, please.
Hello, Lama. Thank you so much for your teaching. I have a question about the moment-to-moment daily practice. If a phenomena is in front of me and it seems an aspect of ignorance.
Who's talking to you? I can't see who's talking to you.
This is Dawn.
I can't
This is
see.
Dawn
What's
Venerable.
your face? What's the problem with your face? Why can't you show me your face?
Let me.
Why do you want to be invisible? You're seeing my face, so at least you can give me your face. Thank you.
Hi.
Not hi. Thank you very much, Dawn. How can I help you?
Thank you, Venerable, for your teaching today. If I'm understanding that the phenomena to see like Buddha nature in individual phenomena.
I don't know what that means, darling. See Buddha
So-
nature, individual phenomena. It has no meaning. I don't understand the question.
Okay. So as the antidote to my own ignorance and anger, if I see someone in front of me that is in this aspect,
I
do I
don't know
connect?
what you mean, Dawn. It's too complicated, darling. You've got
Okay.
to much. Dawn, please, I beg you, be quiet. I need you to speak much more simply. You sound so complicated. Can you please ask me a very simple question? Because I can't understand your questions, darling. Your words seem more complicated. So please ask me a simple
Okay.
question. What's the question, Dawn?
So to have compassion for
What's the question, darling? Ask a question, Dawn. Keep it
so
simple.
when I
And ask a
okay
question.
when I see someone angry in front of me, is it the practice to just recognize my own anger? Like
There's
that's
100 practices, Dawn. Every single thing in the Lam Rim is a tool that you can use at any given time, depending on what you need to learn. So the first one is, thank you for showing me my own disgusting anger.
okay.
That's one of the first practices. Thank you
Yes.
for showing me my own anger. That's one practice. Another one is to have compassion because the person is harming themselves. It's a question of which one you need to be applying at that moment. That's it.
Okay.
The answer. Okay.
Okay.
That-
Thank you.
That's the point of the question, is it?
Yes, that's the point. That's what I
What
was
was all the Buddha nature rubbish you talked about then? What was all that fancy stuff about?
Oh, I was just thinking about just how to see someone as pure rather than
That's another level of practice. That's called Tantra. It's up to
Okay.
question what you're at in your practice. There's a sutra level, the simplest level, the middle level, the advanced level, and the highest level. There are hundreds of ways of seeing. The very first one is, thank you for showing me my own shitty anger, and shut your mouth. First practice. Next one is compassion. Have compassion for the person because they're harming themselves. Next
Okay.
level of compassion, see it as having no inherent nature. Next level of compassion, see it as a wrathful deity showing you your own shitty anger. It's all a question of what you understand from the teachings, what level you're at, and what you need to learn, which means you need to learn the teachings, Dawn, one step at a time, but just jumble them all up together.
Okay. Thank you, Venerable.
Thank you, Dawn. Who else would like to ask me a question? Nobody. Well, it's enough. Enough. We're finished. Okay, finish this module. We're finished, you people. And you people have to read her wonderful, Kendall's wonderful course notes. Do your discussions with each other. Do your practice every day and learn slowly, slowly, slowly. Grow slowly, slowly, slowly. And do your practice day. And then I'll see you whenever it is next week, I suppose, for the next module. Okay, people. Jangchob, Semchog, Rinpoche,
Thank you.
Panam, Keguchig, Kepan Yampa, Mepa Yang, Gongne, Gondu, Pelbashog, Gewa Di, Nudodag, Lama Sange, Drugyone, Drowa, Chikyang Malupa, Dei Sada, Gurpa Shog. And may we never develop, even for a moment, wrong views towards the deeds of our most precious lamas, with faith and respect gained from seeing their goodness. May their full inspiration flow into our hearts. And may bodhicitta grow and grow and grow in the hearts of all. Maybe develop discipline, humble a little bit every day in the morning, a little bit every day at night, knowing what our commitments are, ticking the boxes and watching our mind and our body and our speech like a hawk every second. Then we can only get better. As the Tibetans say, nothing gets more difficult with practice. So have confidence and persevere and keep moving. Thank you, precious ones. Thank you very much, Tara. Thank you, Lars. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay? Thank you,
Thank you.
darling.
I love you.
Very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Venerable.
Thank you, Neat
Thank
darling.
you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank
Thank you, Tara.